Morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Faith Church. I'm Pastor Steve, and we're glad that, I almost tripped myself. Glad that you've joined us for worship. It's a beautiful morning here in the North Woods. Excited to be gathered together. We have a special guest this morning for our time in worship and in the Word, and so we're excited to share that this morning together. But I invite you to stand this morning as we begin in worship as I read a portion of Psalm 73. It says, "Who do I have in heaven but you? And I desire nothing on earth but you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart, my portion forever. Those far from you will certainly perish. You destroy all who are unfaithful to you. But as for me, God's presence is my good. I have made the Lord my refuge, so I can tell about all you do." And so this morning, our desire is to tell about all that the Lord has done in our lives as we worship Him in His presence.
Show us your power, show us your glory, Lord. Show us your glory, show us your power, show us your glory, Lord. River flowing from our heart, filling every part of our praise. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Oh, oh, from north to south and east to west, we hear Christ be magnified. For the whole earth echoing his eminence, his name would burst from sea and sky. From rivers to the mountain tops, we hear Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Every creature finds its inmost melody. Every human heart is made in cry. In one enraptured hymn of praise, we sing Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. I won't bow to idols, I'll stand strong and worship you. If it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice because you're there too. I won't be formed by feelings, I hold fast to what is true. If the cross brings transformation, I'll be crucified with you. His death is just a doorway to resurrection life. If I join you in your suffering, I'll join you when you rise. When you return in glory, all the angels and the saints, my heart will still be singing and my song will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me.
That's our prayer this morning, that Christ would be magnified in us as we worship together, as we interact with one another, as we express our love and our desire to know Christ more. We thank him, we praise his holy name, these things. Amen.
Well, good morning. Good to be back with you this morning. If you're a guest this morning, we're so glad that you chose to be with us Just good to be together. Yes, I was away with the students this past week in Indianapolis for a mission trip down there. We had a great time. We'll hope to tell you a little bit more about that in the coming weeks with a little more formal presentation. But just to give you a picture, Indy is a wonderful city if you haven't been there. It's one of those places that most Wisconsinites probably drive through on the way to Florida or other places, right? But a great city, a lot of fun right now with the NBA Finals going on, so the Pacers things is all over the city. But what we did while we were there was two main things. One, we worked at the Salvation Army or with the Salvation Army for a kids' day camp, and it was a beautiful sight to see 9 young men and 3 young ladies helping out young kids for a whole time. So they learned what it's like to be a teacher. They learned what it's like to be a parent in about 5 hours a day. So it was an awesome thing. And then the second thing we did is worked at a food bank, which is a food bank is who sources and provides for food pantries, like 58 agencies all over the state of Indiana. So more physical, hands-on work. So give you just a little picture of what happened last week. It was wonderful. Thanks for your prayers and the encouragement and support that you all did for our students while we were away. Today, a couple announcements just to make sure we're aware of a few things. 2 weeks from today, we'll be outside at 9 a.m., just one service, 9 a.m., 2 weeks from today, July 4th weekend, if that helps. And then we've been talking about for quite some time the showcase, the music showcase that is tonight, starting at 6 p.m. as far as the concert and 5:30 as far as dinner is concerned. With a lot of conversations and thought processes, we have decided to move it inside. Okay, so now there's a lot to think about. If we were in Tucson, we'd cancel because it's too cold at 88 degrees. But we're in the Northwoods, and it just felt like we would all be drenched to a sweat. It wouldn't be super enjoyable. What would be the what would be the way that more people would come, and we felt like having it indoors tonight would be that. So we'll still have food, though. Please come. I have lots of brats, lots of hot dogs for you to eat. So we'd love to see you here at 5:30 for that. We'll skip the yard games because, again, we don't want you to melt. But we will be inside for dinner, 5:30. Showcase starting at 6. Should be a wonderful time together. As you saw, we have, I think, 6 or 7 musicians / artists going. 6. Great. So we'll hope to see you there tonight. Today is a little bit of a unique day as well in that we've invited Greg Koukl. He comes once a year, generally speaking, to us about this time of year. Greg is the founder and now president of Stand to Reason, which is a group that he'll tell you more about, and you'll see a little bit more about what he does and what that ministry does to advance the cause of Christianity across the world. So, Greg, I'm going to invite you up, and then I'm going to pray before you transition into speaking. God, we thank you so much for this day, a beautiful summer day. Sure, it feels warm, but we are grateful for just that warmth on our skin. We're grateful to gather together as the body of Christ. We ask that your name would be lifted high, as we just sang about, that you would be magnified in and through your people. Lord, teach us about you today. May your Holy Spirit do that. May it rest on our hearts. May it rest on Greg as he speaks and has prepared for today. And Lord, just may he be emboldened by that. May we hear that with receptive hearts. And Lord, we just ask that again, your name would be glorified in this morning together. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Randy. Morning. This church has been my spiritual home for over a quarter of a century here in Wisconsin. And I actually started coming here when under Gordon's watch, and that was a long, long time ago. But it seems like every time I get a chance to speak with you, I have some crazy thing that has happened to me. Some of you remember about 4 years ago when I had to stop right in the middle of my talk and go and throw up in the bathroom because I was sick, and then I came back, and what did I do? I finished the talk. All right. One year I almost poked my eye out working on my pier. Remember that? I had a big black eye. Well, this year, you ready for a little story? So I was here in May for 4 weeks and then went home for 2 weeks. But while I was here in May, I had to take a trip to El Paso, do some work there. And I had a little bit of a cold, a little scratchy voice. But I had 6 events I had to do, and 2 of them were Sunday morning service, and 2 in the afternoon at the same church, and 2 the next day at the same church. And halfway through the second service, I started getting a little croaky, a little raspy. And then at lunch, before the next 2 services, I'm talking with my host over lunch, and I get croakier and croakier, and then completely shut down. I could not get any sound out of my vocal cords at all. Now I'm thinking one of two things have happened. Either God shut me up because I was talking too much about myself at lunch, which is entirely possible, or the devil was trying to keep me from finishing those last 4 talks. And so I opted for the second option, and I came back to the pastor that afternoon, and I said, I can do this because I can whisper. And so I grabbed the microphone, now the handheld, and put it right next to my lips, and I told the audience that had gathered then for the afternoon session, I said, there have been people who have been praying for years for me that I would lose my voice. And God has answered their prayer. Now, many of you in the second service heard I was going south, and I know you were praying for me, and then people are shooting their hands up all over the audience. Well, God didn't answer your prayer. But here's the deal. I'm whispering all of this right into the mic. I said, we're going to do this because I'm going to whisper very loudly, and you're going to listen very carefully. That's going to be our agreement. Well, it worked out. And I got all the talks done, thankfully. But then I came back here, and I had my voice back again the first day back. So go figure. Anyway, hopefully it'll be a relatively eventless rest of my time up here. Randy talked about my role at Stand to Reason, 32 years now. And a lot of times what we're doing is training Christians to engage productively in a thoughtful way, in a winsome and attractive way, to make a difference for the cause of Christ, all right? Now, in our culture, we've got a lot of things going on that's making it harder for us to do that. And so a lot of times what we do is we talk about ideas that are kind of in the way, that are making our job more difficult, but we don't understand the ideas, and so it's hard to deal with it. And so what I'd like to do this morning is I want to talk about one of those ideas, and maybe unwrap it a little bit for you and help you to understand it, so maybe then you'll be able to deal with it and maybe be encouraged by this RX, so to speak, as well. So my question here is, why are so many people bugged at Christians? Now, that's always been the case in history in some measure, but not in this culture. In this culture, things have ramped up, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, okay? And I'm wondering, why is that? Now, there's a lot of political turmoil going on, and okay, I get that. But there seems to be an anger towards Christians. Now, by the way, when I say Christians, I just need to qualify this. 65% of the people in America self-identify as Christian. They are not in trouble with anyone in the culture because the vast majority of them think like everybody else in the culture, all right? They're fitting right in. It's those who are, when I say Christians, I'm talking about people who are following Jesus, who say the same things about the world and about sin and salvation and morality and God that Jesus said about it. If you're that kind of Christian, and those are the kinds of Christians I've experienced in this church, well, then the heat is on for you, okay? And why is that? And I think it has to do with the power of an idea that many are deeply confused about, and that idea is called tolerance. And I want to give you 3 examples of the confusion of this that I've encountered in my own life speaking over the last few years. And even there's a newspaper article as well I'll show you. And Ethan is going to help me by bringing some slides up for me. So Ethan, bring this first slide up for me, please. I think. I got a chance to speak in Calgary, Alberta, at a university called Mount Royal University. And the church that sponsored this event, and it was a sanctioned event there on the university, so everything was up and we followed all the rules, basically. And they made a poster that wasn't very effective because there's no writing on it, you know. How are we doing? There we go. Thank you. They made a poster to publicize the event. Now that person is not my younger brother. That is me in a previous life, all right? But it was pretty basic. Isn't intolerant to say Jesus is the only way? This was the topic that I was going to be talking about at Mount Royal University. And then you could see the rest. Is choosing a religion merely a matter of preference, like chocolate versus vanilla? Or is it about something much more serious? Come here, Christian author, speaker, etc., and all the details there. It turned out that they would not allow us to post this poster on the campus to promote the event, even though it was a sanctioned event there at the university. Why not? Well, first of all, the title, they said, is divisive. Now, why do you think I gave a talk titled, "Is it intolerant to say Jesus is the only way?" Because that's what the students on campus were saying about the Christians. This is intolerant. Now, think about it. If it's not divisive to make the charge, how is it divisive to answer the charge? Go figure. In any event, that was their thinking. Oh, they had one other objection to the poster. It had racial overtones. I see you looking up there. Look closely. Oh, my goodness. You see it? Chocolate and vanilla. I am not making this up, all right? Now, I think at Calgary, Alberta, they have grocery stores there that sell chocolate and vanilla. I didn't see lines of people protesting the racial overtones of the choice of ice creams that were in the store, all right? This is nutty. And by the way, what was the name of the group that was responsible for the censorship of our event? It was the Campus Human Rights Group. Now, the next piece is a headline from the LA Times, and you can put that up, Ethan. I sometimes wonder when people put front pages together, they don't look closely at what it says. And here's the next slide. The headline says, "Gay leaders say protesters are using hateful tactics." And then they have two pictures, right? And when you zoom in on one of the pictures, you see those angry people, there they are, yelling and screaming and being all, wait a minute. That's the gay leaders. Who are the dangerous folk? Next slide. Oh my goodness. 5 Russian old women in babushkas sitting on a park bench. These are the dangerous people. Now, the next slide I want to prepare you for, I was in the Seattle area, speaking at a local university there. My wife and I were walking around town. We saw a bar called Jake's Bar, and it had a poster on the outside explaining what Jake's Bar was all about. So I took a photograph of it. Here it is. By the way, there's a naughty word in there that I blanked out. Now, I know what you're doing. You're looking really hard to see what that naughty word is. Cut that out. You can actually see a reflection of my body there in the window as I'm taking the photograph. Here's what the poster says. Jake's is a hate-free queer bar. We welcome everyone, unless you are homophobic, transphobic, racist, sexist, heterophobic, thief, drug dealer, violent, bigot, expletive deleted. And if none of these apply to you, welcome and have a fabulous time. And then read the fine print. The staff at Jake's cares about you. If you feel that someone here is compromising our safe, hate-free space, please don't hesitate to let one of us know. Subtext, and we'll throw them out, basically, all right? Okay, this is a great example of the point that I'm trying to make. There is a group of people that love everybody who is just like them. And the minute you deviate from their orthodoxy, as it were, then you are persona non grata. Now, of course, Christians deviate from current orthodoxy all the time, which is one reason that they are personas non grata. That's the confusion here. The so-called tolerant ones seem to be the ones who are acting in harsh and bigoted and judgmental and condescending and oppressive ways. This happens all the time. Now, by the way, I'm not here to whine. I'm not here to complain. If you are a follower of Christ, this is your lot. This is the way it's been for thousands of years. This is the way it's going to continue to be until Jesus returns again. We're not whining. We're trying to understand. We're trying to see things the way they actually are. And why is this going on? Why is it so many so-called tolerant ones are showing so much intolerance? And I think in a very odd way and completely unpredictable way, this confusion about tolerance has been deeply influenced by the events of 9/11. Now, when I talk about 9/11, do you realize that you have to be 25 years old to even have any conscious recollection of that event? This is amazing because those of us who experience it as adults, it's like yesterday. It was such a powerful and savage assault on the American psyche. But in any event, something unusual happened during that time. People wondered, gee, did folks come back to church after 9/11? Yeah, churches were full for a while. And then when the fear ebbed, then things went back to normal, so to speak, except for one thing. Oddly, the culture became more sympathetic to one religion and more hostile to another. The religion, well, let me ask you this. What is the only religion in this country that has the word phobia attached to its name to protect it from criticism? Is it Jew phobia? Is it Hindu phobia? Is it Christian phobia? Is it Buddha phobia? No. It's Islamophobia. In other words, it took an Islamic terrorist attack on the United States of America that cost, 1,977 lives on American soil to eventually make Islam the most favored status religion in the country, protected from criticism. And you know this because you lived through it, and we're still living through it. And then Christians were the ones that were considered the intolerant, dangerous ones. And this was exemplified in an article in the New York Times that was written by Thomas Friedman. And the title, Thomas Friedman is one of the cognoscenti of this country. He's the smart guys. And he was writing an article titled The Real War. And by the way, this article went out when the smoke was still rising from the Twin Towers. And in this article, he was explaining that we are not fighting to eradicate terrorism. Terrorism is just a tool, he says. We're fighting to defeat an ideology which he called religious totalitarianism. Now, the key here is how he characterizes religious totalitarianism. Religious totalitarianism, he says, is a view of the world that my faith, whatever that happens to be, can be affirmed and held passionately only if all others are negated. Now, of course, that was the attitude of the terrorists who flew the planes into the Twin Towers, into the Pentagon, into that field in Pennsylvania, sure. But he clarifies this a little bit more. He applauds a rabbi who, in his words, set up his own schools to compete with fundamental Jews, Muslims, and Christians who used their schools to preach exclusivist religious visions. Oh, now we have it. In other words, if you hold to a religion and you actually think your religion is true, exclusively so, and that makes sense. If one religion is true, whatever it is, then other religions contrary would have to be false. That's just common sense. But if you hold to that view, you're the problem. And that would apply not just to those men who flew those planes into the Twin Towers, but virtually everybody in this room and every Christian sitting in a Followers of Christ church around the world today. In one fell swoop in the New York Times, Thomas Friedman included all of you with those terrorists. Now, this was the first time that I heard that I was dangerous, simply because I said the same thing about Jesus and the world that Jesus of Nazareth said about himself and about the world. Nowadays, the going term is Christian nationalism. This is the big scare word, the dangerous Christians. So what's going on here? Let me mention two related concepts. I think people have been taken in by the myth of neutrality and the myth of tolerance. And what I want to do in our remaining time together, three things. I want to show that no one is neutral. No one is neutral. And if the kind of tolerance that the culture is talking about now depends on neutrality, then no one's going to be tolerant either. I also want to show that there's nothing unusual about thinking that your religious views are actually correct. It's not bigotry. It's not arrogance. It's not intolerance. It's just simple math, and I'll show you that in a minute. And three, I want to show you that the currently politically correct understanding of tolerance is actually intolerance in disguise. It's the intolerance of tolerance, all right? So let's talk about each in order. The myth of neutrality. I'm going to read something that was written by Faye Waddleton. Some of you might recognize the name, former president of Planned Parenthood. You can imagine I don't agree with much of what she believes, but I'm not reading this to ridicule. I think it's a powerful piece written to express the idea I'm concerned about. So let me read it to you. It's very persuasive, by the way, but it's also flawed. And maybe you'll catch the flaw as I read it. Open quote. Like most parents, I think that a sense of moral responsibility is one of the greatest gifts I can give my child. But teaching morality doesn't mean imposing my moral values on others. It means sharing wisdom, giving reasons for believing as I do, and then trusting others to think and judge for themselves. My parents' morals were deeply rooted in religious conviction, but tempered by tolerance, the essence of which is respect for other people's views. They taught me that reasonable people may differ on moral issues, and that fundamental respect for others is morality of the highest order. I have devoted my career, she writes, to ensuring a world in which my daughter Felicia can inherit that legacy. I hope the tolerance and respect I show her as a parent is reinforced by the work she sees me doing every day, fighting for the right of all individuals to make their own moral decisions about childbearing. She's talking about abortion on demand there. 75 years ago, Margaret Sanger founded Planned Parenthood to liberate individuals from the mighty engines of repression. As she wrote, the men and women of America are demanding that they be allowed to mold their lives not at the arbitrary command of church or state, but as their conscience and judgment may dictate. And then she closes. I'm proud to continue that struggle to defend the rights of all people to their own beliefs. When other people try to inflict their views on me, my daughter, or anyone else, that's not morality. It's tyranny. It's unfair, and it's un-American. Close quote. Wow, that's good writing. Sounds so sensible, so reasonable, so tolerant. But there's a fundamental flaw. Okay, first let me focus on the implicit emphasis that she gives on neutrality, right? She says that we should trust others to think and judge for themselves, be neutral regarding other people. People have their own ideas. Americans are demanding that they be allowed to mold their lives as their own conscience dictates. In other words, she's promoting a moral neutrality and non-interference, all right, especially in light of her project, pro-abortion. We're to be morally neutral, tolerant towards others. And if we're not neutral, then we're not tolerant. That's the message. Okay, what's the flaw? Here it is. Faye Waddleton's not neutral. She says she wants to continue the struggle to defend the rights of all people to their own beliefs, but then when you differ with her, she says that you're unfair, un-American, and tyrannous. Those are moral judgments, you see. For example, does Faye Waddleton show the same neutral respect for someone following their conscience and blocking the door of an abortion clinic? Absolutely not. Now, she may have a reason why, and I'm not taking on that issue right now. The point I'm making is this is not neutral. It's a very particular view from which she judges other people who differ. In fact, she's happy to force her moral view on others. How do I know? Because she said it. I have devoted my career to ensuring a world in which my daughter Felicia can inherit that legacy. What legacy? Her point of view. And how does she accomplish that? She's a lobbyist. She goes to Washington to inveigh upon lawmakers to pass laws that reflect her moral point of view and maybe not yours, but you are forced to follow it. All right? It's almost as if she's saying, I've devoted my career to passing laws and ensuring a world in which my point of view is enforced. And to put a sharper point on it, Pamela Moraldo, who followed her at Planned Parenthood, made this statement when the federal government actually passed a law making it illegal to block an abortion clinic. Okay? And here's what Pamela Moraldo said about that law. Quote, "This law goes to show that no one can force their viewpoint on someone else." You're chuckling, for those who are chuckling, because you see it. All laws force a viewpoint. That's the point of the law, for goodness sake. Now, again, I'm not complaining that she's a lobbyist and passing laws, okay? That's the way it works here. Everybody gets a voice, everybody gets a vote. Some people get 2 votes. Just saying. I don't object to that. I'm just saying it's not neutral. So my first point is neutrality is a myth. Everybody who weighs in with any point of any kind surrenders their neutrality. And if tolerance, in the common sense we talk about it now, trades on neutrality, and there is no neutrality, then that kind of tolerance is in trouble. Here's the next point. It's not a vice to think one religion is true and another is false. Now, I was on a TV show a number of years ago in Canada, and it was called Test of Faith. And this is an unusual show. It goes an hour on cable, national. And what they do is they invite some weirdo to come in and sit in a hot seat. There's a semicircle table around him. There are seats on the other side, and there's a talk show host, and then 3 people come in and they beat him up for an hour on some religious issue, you know. So I got invited to be on that show. Where do you think Mr. Koukl was sitting? Yeah, I was a weirdo in the hot seat. And what was my weird view? My weird view is I did not think that all religions led to God. Okay? Now, that view is called religious pluralism. Not just that we have lots of religions, but they're all on the right route. All paths lead to the top of the mountain, all roads lead to Rome, that concept. Now, I think this is just false on logical grounds, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But in any event, to say that now in our culture, this is bad news, to act as if your religious view is correct. Now, in this circumstance, I wasn't going to campaign for my view of Christianity. I mean, I could have campaigned and said, Jesus is the Messiah, he rose from the dead, Christianity is true, and if Christianity is true, then those who contradict it are false. And that's a noble way to proceed. But had I done that, I would have made Christianity the subject, and I wanted to just stick with the issue of pluralism, because I think this is a bad idea and people haven't thought about it, that all roads lead to Rome kind of thing, all right? So I was going to deal with that. Now, when they have these kind of shows, usually they do an interview on the phone before they, fly you out. They want to see if you're weird enough, right? So one of their guys, Pierre, who turned out to be an atheist, but he was on their team, called me, interviewed me for 45 minutes. We had a great talk. He figured, yeah, he's weird enough. We're going to fly him out. So they fly me out. And just before we start the show, we're on a sound stage, and I meet Pierre. And we're making common cause and talking. We're buddies because we already had our phone call. And I make a prediction to Pierre. I say, Pierre, here's where I think this is going to go. I could be wrong, but I'm going to make an argument against religious pluralism, and the other people on the panel are going to ignore the argument, and then they're going to come after me personally. And they're going to start calling me names, like narrow-minded, arrogant, intolerant, that kind of stuff. I said, maybe it won't go that way. We'll see. All right, gentlemen's wager. Well, the cameras roll, and I'm the first one on deck, and Valerie Pringle asks me about why I don't believe pluralism is true, okay? And that's the real core question. And so I gave her my argument, and you can use this argument too. It's a great argument, as you'll see. Very simple. I said, here's why. Christians say that Jesus is the Messiah. Jews say that he's not the Messiah. Well, he either is the Messiah or he isn't, okay? And if he didn't exist at all, then he isn't the Messiah, right? Now, if he's not the Messiah, the Christians are wrong and the Jews are right. If he is the Messiah, then the Jews are wrong and the Christians are right, but under no circumstance can they both be correct on this absolutely foundational issue in both religions. Are you with me? Okay, if God exists, maybe it's an open question, but if he exists, he's either a personal God or not. If it turns out that God exists but is not personal, then the Hindus are right, and the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims, they're wrong. If he is personal, then the Christians, Jews, Muslims are correct on that point, and the Hindus are wrong, but under no circumstances can they both be correct about this foundational issue. When you die, I don't know, maybe you go to heaven or hell, maybe you get reincarnated, maybe you lie in the grave, but you can't do them all at the same time. Someone's mistaken. Maybe I'm mistaken. We could all be wrong, but we can't all be right. So that was my argument. Then we cut to commercial. First person up was T. Sher Singh. He's a Sikh from Toronto, a barrister, an attorney. The Sikhs wear the turbans. He was very nice to me in the green room. But now he's coming out swinging. Actually comes out passive-aggressive first. Because Valerie Pringle asked Mr. Singh, what do you think about what Mr. Koukl said? He's watching on the monitor, right? And he said, well, if Mr. Koukl thinks he won the lottery, good for him. What's up with that? Won the lottery? What's he talking about? Well, what he had done is he'd gone to our website, str.org, just for the record, and he downloaded some things I had written that reflected on my convictions about Jesus of Nazareth, that he was the only way of salvation. His claim, not mine. All right? I mean, Jesus' claim, not mine. And he had read that. I said, okay, I know what kind of Christian this guy is. And so he says, oh, lucky you, you won the lottery. Of course, that had nothing to do with anything we were talking about. That was passive-aggressive, but he didn't stay passive for long. Pretty soon, he's shaking his papers, other things he's downloaded across the table. He's mad at me. You kind of people are dangerous. You're the kind of people who start wars. That's what he said. He got so animated that Valerie had to settle him down in the chair because he was Mr. Tolerant now, right? Because he's so mad at me because I'm a follower of Jesus. By the way, does being a follower of Jesus have anything, for me being a follower, have anything to do with the topic at hand? No. I'm not there as a follower of Jesus, but that's where he's attacking me. And then a couple more people came up. It was a Hindu pastor after the next break, and then a woman from the United Church of Canada came up. All three of them pluralists, very aggressive, especially the woman. Some people think they have the corner on the truth. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint, looking at me, right? I never suggested that. I just gave an argument why everybody couldn't have the truth if it was contradictory, right? Anyway, pretty soon in the conversation, little words start creeping in. Words like intolerant, arrogant, narrow-minded, bigoted. Are they answering my argument? No, they're fulfilling my prophecy. Then at some point, I did point that out. I said, you know what, it's interesting, we've changed the subject here. And by the way, if you're in a conversation with somebody else and they start calling names of you like that, it's fair to ask this kind of, point this out. Looks like we changed the subject. This is what I told them. We first were talking about pluralism, this idea. Now we're talking about me. Now we're talking about Mr. Koukl's character. Mr. Koukl is arrogant, he's narrow-minded, whatever. And by the way, if I'm acting arrogantly, shame on me. But I wasn't. That wasn't the issue. It's just a handy way of shutting other people up, and that's what people do nowadays in the culture. They call names. And so I said, now we're focused on me. Basically what you're saying, I told the panel on the air, is you're saying I'm mean. I'm a bad person. Okay, why don't I just admit it? I'm a mean, bad person. I agree with you all. Now that we all agree that I'm a bad person, can we now get back to the discussion that we're supposed to be talking about on religious pluralism. I actually made another observation. Your challenges to me right now make it really clear you think my view is false. That is, my Christian view that I've explained or that you've characterized here is false. All right, it might be. But if my view is false, then it is not the case that all religions are equally true. And if that's the case, then I'm right about what we're supposed to be talking about, and you guys are wrong. They didn't get it. One whole hour, they didn't get it. I'll tell you who got it. Pierre got it. The atheist got it. And he bounded up on the stage after the show was over, and he was really hopping mad, especially at the Sikh, and he was using language appropriate for an atheist to express himself. Here's the simple fact. It's not bigoted to think that your religion is true. It's just simple math. So I want to give you a real quick way of dealing with this in conversation with people when they bring this challenge up. Okay, it's a tactical maneuver that might help you. When somebody calls you a name, whatever it happens to be, always graciously ask for a definition. Ask what they mean by that. Why is it they think you qualify for this name? All right? So if somebody says to me, well, and they've done this numbers of times, well, you're intolerant. I ask, what do you mean by intolerant? What is it that I'm doing? Well, you think you're right and everybody else is wrong. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think that when I have a belief that I think my belief is true, do you think I think my belief is true? Of course I do. That's why I believe what I believe. If I didn't think it was true, I wouldn't believe it, right? I'd believe something else and think that was true. Watch this. Just like everyone else. Just like everyone else. I am not the only person in this discussion who thinks my view is correct. I'm just the only one being called a name. And so when I get it clear what they mean by that, you think you're right? I said, well, I do think I'm right. I could be mistaken, but let me ask you a question. Do you think you're right on your views? Right back. What are they going to say? No, I think all my views are false? Not going to happen. Of course they think they're right. All right? Now, sometimes they might do, I like the postmodern two-step, and say, well, my views are true for me. To which I would respond, then why are you talking to me? Obviously, he's talking to me because he thinks his views are true not just for him, but for me too, and I should believe like he does the correct way. That's the dynamic of the conversation. And so I have a final question. Why is it when I think I'm right, I'm intolerant, but when you think you're right, you're just right? What am I missing? Of course, I'm not missing anything. I'm just trying to uncover what's going on with my questions. And what's going on is simple name calling. What if he said to me, you're intolerant, and I said to him, you're ugly. Now, I wouldn't say that, even if it were true, for a couple of reasons. One, it would be unkind. Two, it would be irrelevant, because even ugly people can be right about some things. You think? Don't you hope? All right? A person's character flaws has nothing to do with the truth or falsity of his views. All right? And the most common way nowadays that people use to deal with ideas they don't like is they call names of other people. That's it. They change the subject. And it's fair for you to ask them why they did that. Why did you change the subject? And maybe explain it to them and ask some more questions, just as I shared. Now, I want to clear up this, what's behind what I call the passive-aggressive tolerance trick. I want you to see that the idea shift that's taken place, why this kind of thing happens. Now, I was in Des Moines, Iowa a number of years ago when I was going to speak at the University of Iowa, but I was in Des Moines at a church, and Tuesday at the University of Iowa in Ames, I think, and that Monday I had off. So somebody from the church worked at a Christian school and asked, would you mind coming to speak to our youth at our school in the religion class? And I said, no, I don't mind at all, which I wasn't entirely truthful because I'm not wild about talking to young people. I'm just saying, Randy, I really appreciate what you're doing. And for those great young people, a few of you that came to our reality conference in Minneapolis last November, I hope to see a lot more of you, almost 4,000 people for that Stand to Reason event. Well, that's great. But normally, talking to youth, for me, is like talking to a painting. They're all just sitting there. And I'll make a joke, have the adults will roll it in the aisle. And are you going to laugh? No. Are you going to laugh? No, we're not going to laugh. Oh, God. So I'm in this classroom, and all these, like 12 students file in. And I'm right by the board there. There's a long table here, and they all are sitting in the opposite. It looks like the Last Supper. And I'm trying to help them understand this issue about tolerance. All right, and so I go ahead and I write a sentence on the board. Can you bring that up for me, Ethan, please? And the sentence says, remember, this is postmodern tolerance. In other words, this is the tolerance they will understand. They're used to. And I wrote this sentence, all views are equally valid. No view is better than any other. Well, nothing controversial here. They're all nodding. Remember, this is a Christian school. Then I wrote this sentence up there. Jesus is the Messiah. Jews are wrong for rejecting him. Ooh, them's fighting words, right? And the painting came alive. You can't say that. That's, what do you think they said? Intolerant. And then the young lady sitting over in the corner says, how would you like it if somebody told you you were wrong? I said, think about that, by the way. You mean like you're doing right now to me, young lady? It doesn't bother me at all. I'm a grown-up. So I want you to get a picture of what this kind of attitude is doing to our young people. It is teaching them they are justified in being angry if someone just disagrees with them. All right? So I looked at that first line. I circled it, actually, on the board. You might have an animation there. There you go. And I asked them this question, is that a view? All views are equally valid. No view is better than any other. Is that a view? They said yes. So then I circled the next one. Jesus is the Messiah. Jews are wrong for rejecting him, and asked the same question. Is that a view? It's going to be on the test. Finally, they had to agree. Yes, it is a view. I said, wait a minute. All views are equally valid according to your understanding of tolerance. No view is better than any other, which would include the view that Jesus is the Messiah and Jews are wrong for rejecting him. Not only did the second line disagree with the first line, but the first line disagreed with itself. This view is total nonsense. Do you see this? So I told the students, you want to see how to solve this problem? The way to solve the problem is get rid of what I'm calling the postmodern understanding of tolerance and go back to the classical understanding of tolerance, because tolerance is a virtue properly understood. And so I erased the board and then put two different lines. Here's the first one. I got this from Peter Kraft, the C.S. Lewis scholar. And this is the way he characterizes it. First, be egalitarian regarding persons. Be egalitarian regarding persons. They didn't know what egalitarian meant. They were only seniors. So I said, do you see the word kind of equal in there? Yeah. So you treat people equally. In other words, you treat them with equal dignity and respect. And incidentally, that is a virtue grounded in the Christian worldview. Human beings made in the image of God, we treat them with respect and kindness, okay? However, by contrast, and here's the second thing I put on the board, be elitist regarding ideas. Be elitist regarding ideas. Okay, what's an elitist? Well, they know what that was. That's a snob. What's a snob? Someone who thinks they're better than someone else, right? So you should be snobby about ideas, meaning you should think some ideas are better than others. Why? Because they are. Some are good, some are bad. Some are smart, some are dumb. Some are dangerous. And we ought to have the freedom to be able to freely discuss the differences between those things. Not today, because a switch has taken place. Instead of classical tolerance being egalitarian regarding persons and be elitist regarding ideas, here's what postmodern tolerance has done. It turns it on its head. Here we need an animation, Ethan. There you go. Be egalitarian regarding ideas and be elitist regarding persons. If you don't agree that all views are equally valid, and this is considered intellectual sophistication now. I just read it in Barna a couple weeks ago. You're intellectually sophisticated if you have that kind of attitude. What happens if you don't agree with that first line? You can treat people horribly. You can shame them publicly. You can call them names. You can fire them from their jobs. It's happening. In other words, tolerance has become intolerance, and intolerance has become tolerance. Don't be taken in by this. Don't be taken in by this word game, by this trick. By the way, most of the people who in the culture are taken in by this, they do not realize it. They do not see it. They have absorbed this from the culture. They've been socialized to believe this and to talk this way. But now you see it. And so you're in a position in friendly conversation to help other people see it as well. So you can get down to the issues themselves, the truth or falsehood, as the case may be, about Christianity or other religions, whatever. But that's what you want to focus on, not on some twisted understanding of tolerance that is used to silence opposite views. So don't give in to this tendency to dismiss a view with name calling like sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, bigoted. This is not useful. Always remember that in the final analysis, when all the facts are in, when the smoke is cleared and the truth is fully evident, the person who is simply dismissed as intolerant may turn out to be the one whose views were true in the end, and that matters. Father, thank you for this reflection. Thank you that the world's kind of crazy, but you're not. And that we can follow you in truth and integrity and dignity and graciously show the light of the falsehoods of the world as we're able and as you help us to do. We pray for your mercy to accomplish that. And I thank you for this wonderful church, this wonderful family of Christians that have been my family here in Wisconsin for so many years. I commend them to your mercy and grace. Amen. Now, before I let you go, I have a prayer request. Just toss it out. I don't know, has anybody here, there are big podcasts out like Joe Rogan, et cetera, et cetera. Has anybody here heard of a podcast called The Diary of a CEO X? Well, I hadn't heard of it either, but it's of the magnitude of Joe Rogan. Apparently, according to Spotify, last year it was in the top 5 in the world. They have 10 million subscribers. They have 20 million viewers. It's a lot of people. They have asked me to be a guest on their show on July 3rd on a panel discussion. So my stress level went like through the roof when I thought, I've done things like this before, so it's not strange ground to me, but I definitely would love prayer. July 3rd, Hollywood. I got to fly back to LA. I'll come back on the 4th. Hopefully I'll get back in time for fireworks. But in any event, please pray for me. I'd appreciate that. And if you will pray, then you're dismissed. Thank you.